Yeah.
And Woman Crush. That's what it
That's
is.
it. Shayla Visser.
Shayla.
Who's starting Shayla Visser? Me? You?
Okay.
I'll figure it out. Let's go.
That would be bad if I
Are we ready? Everybody?
Whatever flows.
Okay, just back. Okay, posture up.
Hold on, I got it airplane mode. There.
Okay, here we go. This is Wednesday, right? Okay, yeah, woo. Okay, here we go. Well, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another show on See, Hear, Love. And if you've never watched our show before, welcome. And so glad that you have found us and joined us today. And for those who've been watching with us from day one, which we actually started on International Women's Day, we just want to thank you for all of your support and comments. We're feeling the love from you all over the world. So thank you. Now, if you watched our show this past Monday, we were talking about the church, and specifically from the perspective of millennials. And we were encouraged by two of our guest hosts, who are here with me today, and with Joanna. Karra Overholt, who is the Director of High School and Middle School Ministries at the Church on the Rock in Hamilton, Ontario. And Kassandra Matthews, who is a Spiritual Care Director and Worship Director at St. Andrew's United Church in the beautiful Niagara Falls, Canadian side. And of course, my co-host, Joanna, who is the creative director at C4 Church. It's an AGC church just outside of Toronto. So today we're continuing the conversation because we went a little long on that show. That's okay, though. But I want to talk about, because when guests come on the show, we like to ask them the question, what does see, hear, and love mean to you in the context of your work and life? And so that's what we're going to do today, and in the context of millennials and in the context of church life. So let's just start off with the C part, because I think that's important. But for both of you, and even Joanna, for you, C, what does C mean in the context of your work in full-time church ministry?
So, I mean, I actually would combine See, Hear, and Love, if I may.
Okay.
I often serve at a long-term care home, walking with seniors and disabled people through what is a difficult time of life with change and loss. And so my role is, and my hope with each visit that I have with them, is to remind them that they are seen and that they are heard and that they are loved, not only by me in bearing witness to their pain, but also that Christ sees them and Christ hears them and Christ loves them. And so I try to communicate that in every visit.
Really cool. I want to talk about that for a second, because the elderly people in these long care homes, that seems to be an area in society that we don't go there. Like, we kind of like push them out and put them there, and then they're very, I've heard, very lonely, and families don't visit them as much. Like, talk about that. What's the need there? What can we do?
There is great need. Visiting goes a long way. Amazing story. Shout out to Therapy Tales, a program that we run at the long-term care home where I serve. This elderly woman who is dying had said to me she wishes she could companion with a cat or a dog, and she's afraid she may never again. And then later that day, I flagged down a Therapy Tales person who came, and so I had provided spiritual care, but that was an important need for her. So just to know that they're not alone, to have someone visit with them.
So Therapy Tales, they give animal, like, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's an animal visit program.
Really?
Animal visiting
Oh, they don't
program.
keep them.
They don't keep them. They just visit.
They just bring them
that.
Even better. I want that.
All right, Therapy Tales. Yeah.
The one day I actually had a pet that I went around and did spiritual visiting with. And that was
amazing.
like,
That's great.
it just was a fluke, but it was very effective, actually. So
Yeah, really cool.
Animal therapy.
Cass, can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I feel that, why do we not engage with those that are elderly? Like, I just want to be straight up. What is it about us, a young person, that goes, is it because we're uncomfortable? What do you think it is? Why
perhaps
we're not engaged?
not for me. For me, it is totally my comfort zone,
Yeah.
and I feel like drawn to them. It's actually a huge part of my call. So it's difficult for me to answer that, because I can't imagine not wanting to. But I mean, long-term care homes are not a comfortable place. They're a stinky place. They're crowded. It makes us recognize our own humanity and that we will one day, leave this earth. And so it's pretty organic and raw. So maybe people are uncomfortable with being in touch with that. But I I embrace that and I jump in and I love being a support.
So how can people practically, like, talk to me? How can I get involved? Because I'm not involved. I know the need. I'm not doing anything.
Contact a long-term care home. Ask if you can volunteer to visit, and it would go such a long way. Like send cards.
Okay.
Send cards. Yeah, those are.
That's
some,
a great need, eh? Like we kind of forget about that, and sometimes we're always, sort of going overseas and looking at needs elsewhere. But a lot of us forget the great need in these long-term care homes where people are very lonely and they need somebody. And I think that's a good point about we are faced with our own humanity there, because you're like, wow, this is not easy. This is not fun and jovial and a great time, right? So that's a good reminder. Amazing. Really cool. Karra, what about you? See, hear, love in the context of youth and middle school ministry.
Yeah, totally. Because if Cass is more on the senior, I'm kind of on the way other end of the spectrum with high school students that are crazy, but they're a lot of fun. But I think with them is a lot of times, especially junior highs, get looked over. They're just like, oh, that's that crazy little kid that's like making a noise and mess, and but to be able to come beside students, whether it's junior high or high school students, and to say, I see you, I hear what you're going through, and I want to love you the way that Christ loves you, and point them towards Christ's love is huge. And it's fun to see. It's fun to kind of point kids to Jesus so that they see it's not just an adult that sees them, hears them, loves them, but it's God ultimately that sees them, hears them, and loves them. And we had a junior, a kid who was in grade 10, and for the first time, he grew up in the church, but didn't really have he hadn't experienced God. And we had a praise and prayer night, and we did the station where we had people sit, and you had about 3 students sit, and you do what we call listening prayer, and we just sit, we listen to Jesus, and you draw pictures for the person sitting in front of you, and you just give them to him and say, okay, God, like, you take this, you lead this. And this grade 10 kid drew a picture for this university student, and he's like, I think God wants you to meet you here. And she just like started bawling and was like, that's the lake that I go to when I like do my devotions. And then another guy came and sat, and anyways, it was just at the end of the night that happened multiple times. This grade 10 kid, I see him sitting, and he's just head in his hand, he's like tears, and he doesn't cry. And I go, Aiden, you okay, buddy? And he goes, I think tonight changed my life.
Wow. That's amazing.
And like to see, to have him see that God hears him, sees him, and loves him, and can use him. That's huge. So
that's huge.
Yeah, you're responding a lot. What's going on with you?
Well,
as you're hearing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's resonating. I feel the same kind of joy when I'm able to do that with a senior. And to remind them of that.
Yeah.
So not only do you have senior, but you also are the worship coordinator at your church, your United Church. In that context, what's the See, Hear, Love? Because that is, especially for us coming from evangelical, denominations, and your mainline, experience and expression. What does that look like for you to See, Hear, Love within your United Church?
You know what's really cool, especially with the see and hear part. Often we of course always pray actually when we're planning a worship service, and it is so cool the way it comes together in ways that we couldn't have imagined. And I feel like I am witnessing this. I'm seeing and hearing God's love like in action, like the way, sort of like the way a quilt has both sides, and everyone else just sees the finished product. But I feel like I get to see the behind the scenes, and it's like, God, we didn't plan that, so thank you for putting that together. It
makes like, you look like a genius.
All glory to God. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that's just like our show. Everybody's like, oh, it's amazing, and meanwhile you saw nothing about what happened before this with my hair and all the no makeup, with the no makeup on. Joe, what are your thoughts? Like we've talked about this before, but even just listening to them, what's coming to you?
Well, my work in the church is a bit different. My main focus is in the world of communications and media, and so I do see it as ministry. What I'm trying to do is translate concepts to people in a way that's relevant, fresh, surprising, and creative. And so, for example, we are sitting down recently, and our teaching pastor said he's going to be teaching us on the book of Jude, which is one chapter, and it's about heresy.
Great.
So the challenge then for my type of role is, how do we translate a series on heresy in a way that I don't mean to gloss over what is really there, but how do we articulate this to people? So we get to do this creative process where what we've ended up doing is we always do video and design, graphics, stuff for social media images, quotes, all this kind of stuff that we're pulling. And the image that we're going to be using, the series, instead of calling the series Heresy or something, we're calling the series Beautiful. And it's about the beauty of the good news, the beauty of what is true, as opposed to the ugliness of heresy or lies or false gospels. And so how we're communicating that visually is if you liquid nitrogen a flour, and then drop the flour, it explodes.
Whoa. Really? Did you try it?
Yeah.
So basically what we're doing for visuals is we're exploding flowers.
Really?
And we're going to do, and a lot of that will be in reverse. So it's this sort of like pieces of shattered flour that kind of like pulls back into a beautiful stem. And so we're using that as a visual to communicate something that's far more than that. And so that's the type of work that I do every day in church.
Yeah.
And that's my main work. And it's a privilege to try and figure out how to translate this book to 2017.
Yeah. Cool. You know, when we sort of look at See, Hear, Love, what would your encouragement be to, again, viewers and friends and neighbors who are so not into church, but what's encouragement with them to put onto them See, Hear, Love, the church? You know what I'm saying? We're going to flip it back over to them and say, okay, what would be my encouragement for you to see, hear, and love the church in a new way? You know, what would your thoughts be to encourage them to come back in and experience it again for the first time? Yeah. And to see it, to hear it, and love it in the way that we do, right? What are your thoughts?
Come to a place where you can know that you are seen and heard and loved.
So come to a place meaning what? Like come to
join us in this journey.
Yeah.
And so that you can be refreshed in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like, you might have to go to, and this sounds so bad, but you might have to go to a couple churches till you find your fit. You're not going to find something perfect because we're all human, and a church is full of humans. And so, yeah, I know, right? I mean, you wish you could get away from it, but...
Well, you and me are there.
Yeah, right, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, so, no, but... and to maybe just give your pain to God and say, God, like, I'm ready to fall in love with your bride. It might take a while, and especially if you've been hurt by the church. Like, I think people who have been hurt by the church have a hard journey in front of them. But I think I think taking that step and saying, God, I want to learn to love your bride. I've been really hurt by people, but they're people. They're not you. And so I want you to transform my heart and the way I view church and the way I view your bride, and learn to love it the way that you love your bride, because he calls it his bride. And so when people have been hurt by the church, they really haven't been hurt by the big C church. They've been hurt by people. Yeah. And so learning to say, okay, I've been hurt by a person or people in leadership in the church, and recognizing that everyone's human, and really kind of starting that journey of maybe wholeness and like healing in that.
That's good. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think as the Lord has shown us grace, we need to give grace to the church. Yeah. And that isn't easy. No. And forgiving is really, really tough. I think if you've been in church more than 6 months, you've been hurt by something, disappointed by something, some leader has let you down.
That's a good word.
Always. Yeah. Always. It's full of people. But, Jesus was betrayed by one of his closest friends, Judas. He was also denied 3 times in his hour of need by Peter. I mean, he is used to being around people who have messed up big in the time he needed them the most, and yet he invites them to help lead the church. I mean, not Judas, but Peter. I mean, he invites people who are really messed up and broken to be part of it, and I think that proves more about who he is, and actually that the church has survived for 2,000 years through the disasters of the stories that have happened in our own lives, or the story of the church along the way. There's been great victories too, but it's because it's true and it's good and it's needed that it's survived all of this stuff.
Joanna, that's a good reminder, and for you guys as well, just this idea that when I get frustrated at the church, I need to extend grace to it. right? Because so many people just stop, like, you get hurt, you're out.
Yeah.
And then you make blanket statements like the whole church,
Yeah.
all over the world is bad. Every church in the world, it's like, whoa, we do get hurt, and I think that we need, and especially as women, to really start modeling it. And I'm speaking to myself, so I'm actually being quite convicted to be gracious and extend forgiveness.
Yeah.
And be a part of the church versus being on the sideline just watching and making all these comments about how bad it is, and I'm not being a part of it and using my spiritual gifts to help it and encourage people to know Jesus. It's such a great reminder. Thank you. Any thoughts? I feel like there's so much. A little bit more. We got to get to Women Crush.
Women Crush.
Ahead.
So I was just gonna say that, like, I just see a lot of lives transformed, and so I think if our heart is the gospel, then our heart should be the church as well.
Yeah. No, that's good. Awesome. Well, again, we're going to have continuation of this conversation online, I know, but because it's Wednesday, we're going to have to just roll through this. But we have to crush on a woman today. Woo! It's Women Crush Wednesday.
Yes.
And today our Women Crush, a woman that we admire and that we're going to cheer on because she's doing incredible work in Canada, here we go, is Shayla Visser, National Director of Alpha Canada. Yeah. Woo. Why is she so great? I mean, we have 1 minute each really quickly, but why is Shayla Visser so great in what she does? Because we're just going to crush. Go ahead, Cass.
So I was blown away when I watched an interview of her, and she was sharing about an illness that she had and how she overcame it and how she changed from being selfish in the hospital to wanting God to use her as an opportunity to be Christ to the roommates in the room and even the staff. And that makes a great leader when you're willing to do that behind the scenes. I was very inspired and impressed when I read that.
Amazing. That's great.
Really good.
Karra, what about you? Really with Shayla?
I've read a little bit about her, but even, I know this is going to sound so silly, but if you go on the Youth Alpha website and you just look up her bio, I think sometimes leaders can be very arrogant, and it's just all about just fun little things in her life. And I think that, I know it sounds so little, but that just speaks to humility, and that speaks to not taking herself too seriously. So I think those are really good qualities in a leader.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We're all kind of speaking to the same tone of things. I spent some time with her in a think tank a few months ago in New York City, and she was in the room as a woman who is leading a national organization for our country, and she sat in that room to take notes. She was the secretary, quote unquote. I mean, we at the table of a bunch of millennials. She was there to learn from us about how to move the church forward. Yeah. And again, it was speaking to her humility and her strength, I think, as a leader. That she was acknowledging that she doesn't know what she doesn't know, and so she spent a few days to go down to New York and to sit with us and to record and observe and learn from people who are far less experienced than she is.
Yeah, that's good. And I think for me, I think it's sort of what Cass was saying, because the illness was fungal meningitis, and it was life-threatening. She ends up in the hospital, and she actually says she looked at the situation like, I'm going to die, but I'm going to make this the best ministry time of my life, and share with people who are lonely and afraid about life and hope and Jesus. So that's part of her life. But then you look at the side of her being a national director of Alpha, and for Alpha, for many of you who have probably been a part of it, they run courses in the local church. But under Shayla's leadership, they've sort of said, the local church we love, and we're going to support it. But we're also going to bring Alpha into pubs, workplace, and cafes to bring this course to people where they're at.
And it's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing.
They've redone it. If you haven't seen it in the last few years, it's unbelievable. They've just redone it.
Yeah, and different lengths of the courses, a safe place to discuss some of the biggest questions of life. And I love what she said in an interview. She said, we want to see people, regardless of race and gender and a religious affiliation, come to Alpha to hear about Jesus. And such an innovative way in which she's done under her leadership is incredible.
She's the alpha female.
She is the alpha female. Way to go, Shayla. Nice. We're so thankful for the work that you do, and I know that you're probably watching because we probably just told you a minute before the show launched that you're on. But we just want to, as young women in leadership, say thank you so much for your commitment and the great work you do with the church and with sharing the good news of Jesus with all kinds of people in Canada and beyond. So, thank you.
Thank
Cass and Karra, Joe, for just sharing your thoughts about the church, See, Hear, Love. And again, I think my women crush is all of you. I think today my crush is on you because you guys honestly are doing such great work. And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Again, to hear more about them, all on the website, blogs, vlogs, resources, links to our great sponsors and videos. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.